Welcome to this week's episode of Jonathan on Money. This is episode number 152. I hope everyone's doing well. First, I'd like to start with a shout out to all my brothers and sisters in Israel who are running into bomb shelters constantly due to Iran's barrage of missiles. So I hope everyone is staying safe. What's truly amazing to me is despite being attacked, I know countless people who are still planning to go to Israel the first chance they get, either for a simcha, planned vacation, and so forth. The Jewish people are truly resilient and indomitable. It also goes to show the importance of being driven by one's values above all else. Remember, living true to your values is important both in life and in general and in the world of investing. Hopefully, the war ends very in the near term and there will be no more casualties. Um, in other news, don't forget to buy my new book, D's for Diversification, the ABCs of Personal Finance, which is still available on Amazon and at jonathanonmoney.com. And finally, before jumping into this week's episode, I'd like to share that my upcoming live winter webinar, actually the last winter webinar series of the series, will be on Tuesday, March 24th at 8:30 a.m., featuring yours truly, Jonathan I. Shenkman, President and CIO of ParkBridge Wealth Management, where I'm going to discuss Retirement 2.0, modern planning strategies for 2026. And be sure to include and I'll be sure to include the registration information in the show notes to this episode. Okay, for today's agenda, my talking points this week will discuss: is my yeshiva's retirement plan up to standard? Our quote this week is from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks on opportunity versus temptation. I'll spend the last half of the episode answering listeners' questions, including whether someone with a pension should take out the funds as an annuity or in one lump sum. Finally, we'll end with an actionable idea to implement to your investing life, where we're going to discuss getting laid off before you are ready to retire. And with that, let's jump into this week's talking points. So, someone recently sent me the following question: the yeshiva I work for has a pension, and I always contribute the maximum, including the $24,500 this year. My issue is that there is no guidance. I'm not sure what funds to choose. The firm running the plan includes mostly its own mutual funds, and that's what they suggest I purchase when I call the 800 number on my statement. I also have no idea what the fees are. Something doesn't feel right. Is this standard for all yeshiva pensions? Thanks. This is a good question and likely one that many yeshiva employees face. It's also not something I've discussed at length before, so it's worth exploring. While I can't speak to what is standard for all yeshivas, I can touch on all the points in your question, provide some background, and offer some suggestions for any employees in your situation. First, let's discuss types of retirement plans. It's worth taking a step back to define terms. You use the word pension, but it sounds like you actually have either a 403b or a 401k. Those are known as defined contribution plans, where employees can contribute up to $24,500 in 2026 or more if they're over 50 years old. The plan participants or employees get to choose their own investments, and the money they put into the account belongs to them. Pensions, on the other hand, are retirement programs that provide a guaranteed regular income stream in retirement, often for life, funded by employer contributions. The payout is calculated using a formula based on salary, years of service, and age. The employer bears the investment risk, offering employees predictable financial security. Most pensions are disappearing given the financial risk and cost to the employer. There are a myriad of retirement plans on the market today, but yeshivas typically use either a 403b or 401k given the nature of their business. I'll focus my response on these plans since they are most popular and likely the plan you are referring to. For simplicity, we're going to assume that the 403b and 401k plans operate identically. Now let's discuss who's managing your plan. A 401k plan runs smoothly when there are three key professionals handling distinct responsibilities while collaborating effectively with each other. And they include: one, the custodian. A custodian safeguards all plan assets, processes contributions and withdrawals, executes trades, maintains accurate records, provides participant statements. They are overall responsible for ensuring the money is protected and properly accounted for. And there are many well-known companies on the market that provide custodial services, including Fidelity, Voya, and Empower. The second, in terms of the second option for that will help people out in terms of professionals, is the third party administrator, or TPA. A TPA manages the technical and compliance side of the plan by maintaining the plan document, performing annual IRS and DOL testing, calculating employer contributions, preparing Form 5500, monitoring eligibility investing, and advising on plan design so the plan stays compliant with regulators. And three is the financial advisor. It's imperative to have a financial advisor on the plan. They oversee the whole plan to ensure everything is running appropriately. Their key roles are to help employers select and monitor investments, create and review the investment policy statement, benchmark fees annually to reduce averages, educate employees, and provide fiduciary support that reduces employer liability. Together, these three roles ensure the 401k is structured correctly, operates legally, and delivers a positive experience for both employers and participants. It's also important to understand any conflicts of interest. It's imperative that each of the aforementioned parties is a separate and distinct entity in order to minimize conflicts of interest. You mentioned the company running the plan advised you to use their own product in the plan. It is inappropriate for them to offer advice that is clearly not objective. The company that holds the assets, i.e., the custodian, which I've mentioned, should not be pushing their products on plan participants. Rather, an independent financial advisor who doesn't work at a firm that manufactures financial products should be offering each participant guidance on what funds are appropriate for them. If the advisor does not have financial relationship with the mutual fund companies in the plan, then there is a good chance you are getting unbiased advice that is not tainted by a conflict of interest. Next, let's discuss investment options. Every well structured 401k should have a diverse lineup of mutual funds from a variety of different companies within the plan. Access to many different mutual fund families is known as open architecture plan. If you see only one fund company, that may be a red flag. There should be several funds from which to choose in each asset class, giving options for folks who prefer to take a hands on approach. It's also important to have a variety of target date funds for investors who want to be more hands off. They simply pick the year closest to their anticipated retirement year, and the portfolio will be structured based on that time horizon. It's a way to have a sensibly structured portfolio for retirement without having to do too much work or research. Since 401ks cater to a large group of people, the investment options can't be customized to every employee's specific needs. However, if the plan includes a variety of options from different firms and a lineup of target date funds, all at a reasonable price, then that's a good start. Now to the important topic of fees. The fees on corporate retirement plans may be opaque in nature. There may be layers of associated fees, including investment fees, plan fees, and costs to both the TPA and the custodian. And that's why it's imperative for the plan's advisors to lay out all retirement plan costs annually and benchmark to industry averages. This allows the plan to remain competitive and cost effective, ensuring participants and plan administrators know what if they're overpaying. There's also a fiduciary obligation. Ultimately, the board and leadership at the yeshiva are responsible for meeting their fiduciary obligation to the school's employees. A fiduciary standard is the duty to act solely in the best interest of plan participants and beneficiaries. This includes making decisions with prudence, monitoring investments and fees regularly, and ensuring the plan is operated according to its governing documents. This also involves selecting and overseeing service providers carefully, avoiding conflict of interest, having a regular education meeting, and documenting all major decisions. They are also responsible for maintaining compliance with ERISA, including eligibility rules, contributions, disclosures, and annual filings. Ultimately, the school leadership's obligation is to protect participants' retirement assets and ensure the plan is managed responsibly, transparently, and in line with regulatory standards. Now that we discussed all that, here's what folks can do if they are puzzled or not satisfied with their retirement plan at their employer. While there seems to be a few red flags in the way the questioner's plan is being handled, unfortunately, without having your specific plan information, it is impossible for me to accurately assess that. However, the process of evaluating the quality of your plan is simple. Here's what I suggest all listeners who are in this conundrum do. One, make your voice heard. Reach out to the person at your yeshiva who oversees the plan. This is likely someone with one of the following titles: an executive director, CFO, head of finance, or human resources. Be sure to express your concern and see what they say. Two is to request a review. If they fumble or are not sure what's going on, don't panic. Just suggest they have an independent third party review their plan. When I review 401k and 403b plans, I don't charge a fee and I try to make it as seamless as possible. Other advisors have different processes for handling this type of inquiry and analysis. Three, what to expect from a review. A review involves analyzing several critical pieces of information and offering a succinct report on the plan that points out concerns if there are any, practical suggestions for improving the plan for employees, and ensuring that the employer is fulfilling their fiduciary obligation. A properly administered retirement plan for yeshiva should include annual benchmarking, educational meetings, an open architecture investment lineup, and three distinct parties handling the management of the plan. When administrated correctly, a 401k or 403b can be an invaluable resource to yeshiva's employees. Rebbeim, Moras, and teachers in yeshivas provide some of the most important work in any frum community. They're educating and inspiring our children to live a life of Torah. They deserve to be compensated appropriately, which includes offering a retirement plan that provides the resources that will lead them to a successful financial future. Okay, those are the talking points this week. As a reminder, you can be notified of all my recent articles, webinars, and all the work I put out by subscribing to my free monthly newsletter at parkbridgewealth.com/newsletter. This week's quote is from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks. And for those who don't know, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks was one of the most influential Jewish thinkers and a moral voice of the modern era. He was the chief rabbi of England from 1991 to 2013. He became a global ambassador for faith ethics and interreligious dialogue. Was a prolific author. He wrote more than 30 books on Judaism, morality, and society. And Rabbi Sacks spoke widely on the importance of community, responsibility, and human dignity. Sacks once said, "The single most important distinction in life is to distinguish between an opportunity to be seized and a temptation to be resisted." Rabbi Sacks' quote highlights the important difference between opportunities and temptations. Opportunities move us toward our values, goals, and long-term well-being, while temptations often feel exciting or urgent in the moment, but ultimately pull us away from the path we want to follow. The challenge is that they appear very similar since both demand action and appeal to our emotions. Wisdom lies in learning to distinguish between the two and recognizing which choices contribute to the lasting growth. The insight is profound because it reflects a universal human struggle between impulse and intention. True wisdom is not simply knowing what is right, but developing this discipline to act on it at the right time and resist what may feel appealing in the short term. In this way, self-control becomes less about denying ourselves and more about choosing the right opportunities that align with our long-term values. The idea applies especially well to investing in financial planning. I'm sure many people saw this coming. Successful financial decision making often requires embracing opportunities that may seem unremarkable in the moment, such as investing consistently, diversifying assets, taking advantage of tax advantage strategies, and remaining invested during periods of market volatility. These disciplined actions tend to produce long-term results through power of compounding. At the same time, investors frequently face temptations that can undermine financial progress, including chasing the latest market trend, panic selling during downturns, which is very relevant as of this recording with the Iran war, attempting to time the market, overspending, or taking unnecessary risk. These choices may feel satisfied in the short term, but can erode wealth over time. Ultimately, the lesson is that successful investing is driven less by predicting markets and more about managing behavior, consistently seizing genuine opportunities while resisting short-term temptations. Okay, now let's jump into this week's financial questions. And if you do have a question, feel free to submit it to me and it may be answered in a future episode. Okay, first question. I have a pension at work. Seems to be a theme this week. I can either take it out as an annuity over time or in one lump sum. What makes the most sense? Like many answers I give, this one also depends on a variety of factors. What are the terms of this annuity and how much is the lump sum relative to your net worth? What other savings and investments do you have? What type of company do you work for? And do you believe it will be solvent and able to pay the pension until until you die, I should say? On the other hand, if the annuity offers an attractive rate of return and you have a meaningful amount of money outside of this pension, then the annuity may make sense. You'll be able to grow it. You'll be able to be more aggressive with your other assets, which will allow them to grow more. This will put you in a good financial position later in life where you'll have a larger nest egg that coincides with having higher expenses due to medical costs. It may also help you leave a larger legacy at death. Basically, an annuity can help you take more risk with other parts of your portfolio. The corollary to this is if an annuity either makes up too much of your nest egg and or has an unattractive income stream and or you work at a company that may not be around in a few decades. In these cases, taking the lump sum and diversifying these assets yourself may make sense. You can also take some of that lump sum and buy your own annuity. One final consideration is your age. If you're younger, then the returns you may be able to get over a multi-decade time horizon will outpace what you can achieve in an annuity. Perhaps that's the case. So, where does that leave you? You should evaluate the factors I mentioned here, which will help you make a prudent decision based on your unique situation, or you can seek out professional advice from a financial advisor who can help you evaluate all these criteria. Next question. I have a 401k at work. I contribute and my company matches, but I have no idea what I am invested in. Is that really bad? Yes, this is bad. Unlike a professionally managed portfolio with a financial advisor who we are assuming is competent, the burden to manage your 401k portfolio appropriately falls on you. If you're sitting in a money market account or short-term bond fund, then you're killing yourself financially. Alternatively, if the money ended up in an aggressive growth fund, 100% in your company's stock or a sector fund, you can literally blow up your portfolio. I've seen this during the great financial crisis. People invested their whole 401k into their company stock, and then their company went bankrupt or cratered and took over a decade to recover in some instances. Many of these people worked in the financial services industry, which makes it sad and embarrassing to be so unsophisticated when you work in finance. Most 401ks default to a target date fund based on a participant's age, which is a satisfactory option for many investors. However, it's imperative that you look at your 401k once a year to ensure that it is invested based on your goals and time horizon. Next question. If the Fed lowers rates by a quarter of a point, how should investors be repositioning their portfolio today? Investors shouldn't be repositioning their portfolio based on what the Fed may be doing. You should be invested based on your goals. Short-term money goes in cash or conservative bonds. Long-term money goes into stocks. Mid-term money goes into a mixture of the two. While the Fed lowering rates makes money market yields less attractive, you shouldn't have your cash in a money market account unless you need it for near-term expenses. And if you need those funds in the near term, then it doesn't matter how low rates are. You can't afford to take risk with this money anyway. The bottom line is financial journalists and professional investors like to focus on what the Fed is doing because the former need content to share with their audience, and the latter may be doing financial stuff based on rates. But for retail investors like me and you, it shouldn't make any difference. If you're hyper focused on how rates are impacting your investments, then you are doing something wrong. Okay, next question. I have around 50 investment options in my 401k. I really don't know what to choose. I worked with my advisor and she guided me, but in general, do you think having too many choices is a bad or good thing for investors? In general, having too many choices is bad for investors. The caveat is that the few investments need to actually be good ones. I have seen 401k plans with only a few crappy investments, which is not good. I have also seen plans with 50 plus investment options and a few good ones. You need to know what to look for is the key. In an ideal world, there would be just a few options for investors separated into do it yourself for folks who like to structure their own portfolios and several investment options for folks who want to outsource their portfolio management, basically set it and forget it. Too many options leads to choice paralysis, where you can't decide what to pick. Just we can't decide what to pick, and you just end up doing nothing. I feel like this happens when I go to some restaurants. I don't need the whole UN of food choices when I go out to eat. There doesn't need to be an Italian, Mediterranean, Japanese, American, and French food all on one menu. Pick one food theme, pick three options for an appetizer, three for an entree, and three desserts. The end. Too many choices leads to delays and indecision, and then regrets for not picking something else. Fewer options make things simpler, which lead to progress. If I may, I like to end this question with a quote about simplicity, which is from Leonardo da Vinci, who said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." Next question. What is the best purchase you've made recently that is $100 or less and why? And yes, I stole this question from Tim Ferriss interviews. I like Tim Ferriss's podcast and the 4 Hour Work Week. So I don't really buy things to answer your question. This is not some sort of money saving trick. I just don't like shopping. Other than traveling, eating pastries, and talking about personal finance, there aren't many things that I consider to be hobbies. And other than traveling, the other two don't require much of a financial outlay. I did get a backpack not too long ago for when I travel. If I can hold my, it can hold my laptop, towels, and fill-in snacks, and a notebook, water bottle, and tons of other stuff. It is deceptively large, but doesn't look gigantic. Fits under the seat in front of me on airplane. I can also use it if I have an in-person meeting, which is rare, and I don't look totally unprofessional. I'm a fan. It's also pretty durable. The brand name is Matein, spelled Matein. I got it on Amazon, and it sparks a small amount of joy in my life whenever I use it. The other item that I try to buy once a week that is well under $100 and sparks immense joy is a pastry with a cup of coffee. That's literally my personal Gan Eden. What's the most overrated concept in personal finance? And this is a tough one. I take issues with a variety of popular personal finance opinions, but let's keep things broad. I think retirement in the traditional sense is overrated. Many people believe retirement is a point in your life where you should stop working and spend your remaining years chillaxing. I don't think anybody should ever stop doing some type of work as long as they're physically able to. Work provides tremendous benefit in our life. It gives us structure, intellectual stimulation, a sense of purpose, social interaction, and more. It's very difficult to replicate these qualities outside of work. And if you can replicate them, you'll deteriorate at a very fast clip, both mentally and physically. This may mean working longer at your traditional job, working part time, going into another career that is less time consuming and less stressful, or spending hours a day, every day volunteering, which is also a type of work. I frequently remind my frum clients that a chavrusa, doing the daf yomi, and visiting your einikel are not full-time pursuits in retirement. Retiring to another form of work should be the ultimate goal. Next question. I like to invest with a real estate company, but the issue I have is they don't issue a land acknowledgement of the tribal peoples who own their land before it was colonized. What's the best way to persuade this company to issue this acknowledgement? It seems appropriate. If these are serious people you are investing with and they are also Jewish, then I imagine that they are of the opinion that everything comes from Hashem, who owns the entire universe, and that should be the best type of land acknowledgement that you can get. But let's say you are investing with Goyim. I guess the bigger question is, why would you invest with Goyim to begin with? This seems confusing to me since we all know that Yidden control the market in all industries everywhere in the world. Why work with people that don't have any control and don't have a Yiddish cup? I'm just kidding about that last point. I'd recommend investing with a Yid who has the ultimate perspective that HaKadosh Baruch Hu owns all land, or invest in a publicly traded securities excluding real estate so you don't have to deal with land acknowledgement issue. But shouldn't all companies acknowledge that they're operating on indigenous lands? Perhaps you're a psycho and need to find that real things to worry about. Next question. My uncle is very wealthy and he's debating whether to buy a private jet or do fractional ownership. I'm his consigliere, so he is looking to me for guidance, thoughts. First of all, consigliere, is your uncle the Godfather? All jokes aside, the first two Godfather movies were totally geschmack. However, the third one was an embarrassment. Just my honest opinion, don't off me. Anyway, I don't have a lot of experience in the private jet space, although I do get solicited to buy one every month or so, even though I am exclusively a commercial airline traveler who sits in economy. I have to imagine that owning an actual plane by yourself is insanely expensive. I'm not even that concerned about the initial purchase price, which probably could be financed, but the ongoing maintenance costs are probably astronomical. Fuel, repairs, upkeep, a fully employed staff, a place to park your plane. It has to be at least $1 to $3 million a year for those upkeep costs. When people talk about wealth, they don't factor in that there are different tiers of wealth. The Gvir in your neighborhood may have sold this company for $10 million. The Macher at the other shul has been a partner at a private equity fund for the past 30 years and is worth a few $100s. Perhaps I or you went to Yeshiva with the Bacher who comes from a real estate family and now is a healthcare and private equity entrepreneur who's worth around $4 billion. Okay, maybe a small private jet is worth it in that situation, but only if that individual travels regularly and has the ongoing cash flow amongst all his financial obligations to handle these costs and deal with any inconveniences associated with having a plane. Perhaps flying first class makes more sense. Maybe it's fractional ownership. If you can work out a schedule that works with everyone and defray the costs. really comes down to how much extra liquid cash flow your uncle has and if they truly have the need for their own plane. As your uncle's consigliere, you should run the actual numbers and see if it makes sense. It probably doesn't. Next question. Is there any way to avoid paying tax on an inherited IRA? A good rule of life is that the IRS will always get their money. You can't avoid taxes on this money if you plan to use it, but you can mitigate it. Ways to mitigate your tax liability on an inherited IRA may be one, try to take out a distribution in low income years if possible. Two, give money to charity, which is the only way to truly not have to pay taxes if you give the entire amount to charity, but I imagine that is not your intention. Three, utilize trust in conjunction with your charitable planning to minimize your tax bill. Four, don't take out a lump sum and stretch your distributions over an entire 10-year stretch period. You can wait for lower income years and then take out later distributions at that point. Related to this point, every few years, someone will tell me that they were told of a strategy that will allow them to completely avoid paying taxes beyond giving the entire amount to charity. Beware of these schemes. You will likely pay a lot more to these people to get this scheme set up. It likely won't work out. You'll probably get audited. You will need to then pay more money to your attorney and CPA to deal with that audit. Bekitzer, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Instead, accept the fact that taxes are a part of life and do the best to minimize their impact through legal and completely kosher strategies. Okay, that's it for financial questions this week. And by the way, if you have a more involved personal finance situation, feel free to reach out directly to me and perhaps my team and I can help you. The best way to get a hold of me is via email at jonathan@parkbridgewealth.com. And finally, I'd like to end with a timely, natural idea that listeners can implement to their own financial lives. And today's idea is relevant given the recent news of massive layoffs, which is what should someone do if they got laid off for a few years before they're ready to retire? So many workers in their 50s and 60s face the growing risk of being laid off before they plan to retire. More than half of Americans experience an involuntary job loss after age 50, and many never regain comparable income, creating major financial strain. The key in this situation is take immediate proactive steps. File for unemployment, cut discretionary spending, and reassess savings to determine whether retirement timelines must shift. Understanding Social Security claiming options and securing health insurance through COBRA or private coverage until Medicare are essential. A lower income period can also open tax planning opportunities such as Roth conversions. Professionally displaced workers may need to reposition their skills, exploring consulting or pursue lower stress work that extends their careers. Downsizing or relocating are examples of lifestyle opportunities that can also make earlier retirement feasible. In short, depending on your age, skill set, and lifestyle, there are many different levers that you can pull. It's just a question of what makes the most sense for you. And I actually wrote an article about this for Forbes in 2020, which you can check out. The answer is not the same for every person. And with that, it's a wrap for this week's show. Any comments or questions, feel free to reach out directly to me via email. I love hearing from my listeners. And finally, the secret to financial success is no secret at all. It's to spend less than you make, invest the difference prudently, and ignore all the noise. See you next time on Jonathan on Money.